Good evening. Welcome to the Anacortes City Council meeting of March 10th, 2025. We'll now call the meeting to order. And Mr. Franciac, would you please take the roll?
Mr. Fantini.
Here.
Mr. Young.
Here.
Mr. Walters.
Here.
Ms. Cleland McGrath.
Here.
Mr. McDougall.
Here.
Ms. Hubick.
Here.
Thank you.
Thank you. And will you please join me in saying the Pledge of Allegiance? Okay, we start off the meeting with announcements, and I have several this evening. And the first one is regarding the Guimas Ferry dry dock and haul out schedule, which is beginning on March 15th and goes through April 29th. It's 6 weeks this year, and the car ferry will be out of service and passenger-only service will be available. The passenger-only service will follow the non-peak ferry schedule, and reservations are not accepted. Skagit Transit is stepping in to provide a call-in based shuttle service on the Guimas side to assist residents to and from the passenger ferry, and that is at no charge. And to arrange pickup, please call Skagit Transit Dispatch at 360-757-4433, option 2, and ask for Guimas Dispatch. Please call at least 1 hour prior to the requested pickup time. There are 2 Guimas Ferry parking lots in Anacortes and 1 on Guimas Island with free parking. There's street parking in Anacortes where permitted. A lot of it is 72-hour only, so please be mindful of parking signage, of which there will be quite a bit, I think, and the time limits. Next up is a 40th Legislative District Community Town Hall, Saturday, March 15th. From 11 to noon at the Mount Vernon Public Library Commons. And all 3 of our state reps will be there, Senator Liz Lovelit, Representative Deborah Lakanoff, and Representative Alex Rammel. And all are welcome and encouraged to attend with their questions. One thing that came across my radar today, actually, is that the Cascadia Daily News out of Bellingham is hosting a meet and greet Tuesday, March 18th from 1 to 3 p.m. at the Anacortes Public Library Community Meeting Room. And because they have a commitment to covering communities of rural Whatcom and Skagit counties, they want to hear from our community about issues affecting us. And they're also looking for suggestions for story ideas. So if you get a chance, that might be a fun thing to attend, because let's keep that free press going.
Mayor Pro Tem?
Yes,
Would
Mayor.
you say that date one more time,
Oh,
please?
yes, it is. That is Tuesday, March 18th, 1 to 3 p.m. at the Anacortes Library. You're welcome. So we're continuing to work on our comprehensive plan update, and the city's hosting an open house here in Council Chambers Thursday, March 20th at 6 p.m. So the whole community is invited, and there will be engagement activities and lots of information with a focus on the city's climate element that we've been working really hard on these past several months. There will be a brief presentation at 6:15, and then staff and our consultant team will answer questions about the climate element and the overall comp plan update. So we hope to get a lot of attendance here for that. Last week at our city council meeting, a member of the audience inferred that city staff tampered with municipal court recordings. And this is a serious and unsubstantiated allegation. And after a thorough review, it was determined that none of the recordings were modified in any way. City staff does not have access to edit court recordings. On October 24th, 2024, the court recording system encountered an error which delayed the upload of that day's recordings until October 28th, 2024. And last week, a new court recording system was installed as part of a planned system improvement. Lastly, actually, that was this thing. This other little paragraph is for later. So I am done with my announcements, and we will move on to the Housing Affordability and Community Services Committee report.
Mayor Pro Tem?
Mr. Walters.
The HACS Committee met last Wednesday in our monthly meeting. We got, first of all, a preview of the CDBG plan that we're going to talk about later tonight, so I'll skip over that. But we also discussed with the Anacortes Housing Authority and the Anacortes Family Center the possibility of getting them more support for the 3 projects that are being funded by our affordable housing sales tax. As we might all remember, voters approved that sales tax right before COVID, literally in February of 2020. And then each of their projects ended up being more expensive than anticipated as a result of supply chain issues and just inflation from the post-COVID environment. So our continued city support would take the form of changes to their funding agreements with the city, extending them into the future to extend more support for the same 3 projects the voters approved. We worked on some of the parameters of that, what that would look like, and after talking next to the contracts office, we'll get that in front of City Council for your consideration.
Thank you. Next up is the Planning Committee.
Mayor Pro Tem?
Ms. Cleland McGrath.
Thank you. We had our planning committee meeting today at 5 o'clock, right before this meeting. Mr. Walters, you, Ms. Moulton, Ms. Grange, and then Director Coleman and I were all there. And so we talked a bit about the comprehensive plan update. The big thing we want the public to be aware of is that on March 20th at 6 p.m., there will be an open house here to discuss components of the climate elements, but then also the entire comp plan update, because the climate elements impact all of the other components of that update. So please, March 20th at 6 p.m., if you want to come and hear, get informed about it, and also make comments, that would be wonderful. The more, the merrier. Then in April, we will have the goals and policies be going to the Planning Commission. So stay tuned for all of those good things. There will be discussion, opportunity for public comment. And really, they're looking for public feedback and comment. So please stay tuned for that also. Other than that, Mr. Walters talked a bit about one of the online courses he took through Sightline Institute, and just talked about how framing the housing shortage that we are seeing across the country, specifically in Washington State, specifically in Anacortes and Skagit County, and how we need to focus on talking about what the housing needs are and how we provide more homes, more choices, more options for folks, so that folks can live here, who work here, and really defining the problem so that we can have a conversation and find solutions for it. And that was it.
Thank you. Next, we have the Public Safety Committee report.
Mayor Pro Tem?
Mr. Fantini.
The Public Safety Committee met last week, and we received an update from APD on staffing. We have 1 officer that has a few weeks left in field training, 2 officers that will be heading into the regional academy starting on March 24th to graduate towards the end of July. We also have 2 prospective applicants for open positions that are currently in background checks, and also 2 lateral interviews scheduled. Currently, the only positions we have left to fill are the levy lid lift positions, so hopefully we can get those filled with those applicants. An update on our K-9 officer, Zeke. So he is here, and he is training now. Training is going very well, and they are looking at the end of May to get Zeke into the field. So just a few more months of training, and then he'll be out in the field. Also, we were briefed that Oak Harbor is currently looking to purchase a shooting range in their area that may be able to be used as a training facility for some of our officers. They are looking for some state support for that, but that could be something that is coming in the near future. Our fire department gave us an update as well. There has been an accepted job offer for the last open spot. So should that job offer be accepted, and it's a lateral move from a firefighter from Pierce County, then all of our spots on fire will be filled up, which is great. Also, pretty soon coming before the council, we will see a radio contract for updated portable radios. The radios that we currently have are 8 to 10 years old, and there'll be a plan coming before us to basically purchase 4 at a time over the next 10 years. It's going to be a significant upgrade. It'll be a multi-band system that allows our fire department to talk to not only neighboring fire departments and regional fire departments like Whatcom and Snohomish, but also the police, the National Fire Service. We do have that capability on a few of our radios now, but this will be a full replacement of all our radios, so we have that capability for all of them. It'll also allow, and it is in our budget, which was a question that I asked, so that's great. We also received an update from the chief on the comprehensive planning process and the level of service standards. He went over what our current local standards are that were adopted, but there is a proposal that he's working on that will come to all of us to update those standards to something that is more current and attainable.
Thank you. And last of the committee reports, we have Port City Liaison Committee.
Mayor Pro Tem.
Mr. Walters.
The Port City Liaison Committee met last Tuesday, I think it was. City staff and port staff talked about a number of things that they have going on, including repair to the boardwalk at Ship Harbor, the depot project for expansion of the plaza. Our planning staff talked about about their update to our permit process and their third-party consultant who is reviewing the permit process. One of the more notable joint efforts is on the Seafarers Memorial. That was a project that originally came out of the Bicentennial Commission. We're looking at a new protocol for how people can be added to the Seafarers Memorial. There really hasn't been a protocol in the past, and so this would be one that, informed by the museum's assistance, would help us set expectations on how people can be added to the memorial and how that is all handled. We also talked a little bit about heavy haul permitting versus parade permitting and other public events, because the heavy haul route can in some cases interfere with those, or vice versa. And we talked about the Guimas Ferry haul out, which is coming soon, over which there has been some degree of angst. And then finally, the big agenda item that we had was our event center project. We clarified with port staff that we had taken a couple weeks to look at with outside counsel and with bond counsel the arrangement that we've proposed. We thought there might be some issues with that, but they have been resolved. So we are continuing on course to finalize those interlocal agreements. We lost a couple weeks because of this review. But we'll have some additional small edits. Our next small group meeting on this is next Monday on the 17th. So hopefully we will get some clarity on the few remaining issues and then have some drafts that can come to both the Port Commission and the City Council for approval and move forward.
Great. Does anyone have anything else that they would like to report? Not on the list? No? Okay. Hearing none, we will move on. Now is the opportunity for public comment, and 3 minutes are allowed for that. And we don't have anyone signed up yet, but you still have the opportunity if anyone would like to come up and speak to the council and the public. No takers? Okay. I don't know that we have anyone online. I don't think we do. I don't see anyone. No? Okay. Oh, we do have someone who's standing up. Please come to the microphone and make sure the light is on. And please tell us your name and the city in which you live.
Alan Bush, and I live on Guimas Island. And as you mentioned twice in your opening, is Guimas Island Ferry is being hauled out for 6 weeks coming up. And so with that, the Guimas community is, I guess, pretty much tied to Anacortes in that I think there's around 1,000 passengers daily through that intersection of 6th and I. And with all of the upcoming events, whether it be the haul out for 6 weeks or the projected project down there to revamp the dock and prepare for an electric ferry. Those are concerns of ours, and we'd like to establish a line of communication with you as Guaymas Island residents, organizations. We're over there. I'm a part of the planning committee and the ferry committee. I came to you about a year ago to sort of start up a dialogue regarding these items, but was told, hey, stand back and wait for the opportune time. And I'm here tonight, I guess, asking when would be a good time to come and talk to you or establish some time to discuss those things. So thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Bush. If you'd like to provide your contact information to our clerk, we can reach out to you and talk about that. That would be great. Thank you.
Mayor Pro Tem?
Mr. Walters.
I think it's also worth suggesting that now is a great time to have some interactivity between Guaymas ferry users and Public Works on parking in the neighborhood. I've already received concerns from neighborhood residents about impacts on the neighborhood during the haul out. And I think the city was caught a little flat-footed this year because the county has changed their approach to interacting with the city and to trying to help manage the parking issue. So our Public Works Director is in the back, and he might have another suggestion for who to contact, but any of that interactivity right now on the issue of parking with only a few days to go before the haul out begins, I think might be useful. We changed our parking code in the last couple of years, and also we may not be as flexible as in the past when we had the assistance of Skagit County in managing parking. So I guess I would really suggest that we have that line of communication open right now on parking, then we can see where it goes in the future as well on other issues. We aren't really capable of talking about the terminal improvement project because that will come to us in a quasi-judicial setting, at least my understanding is. But everything else I think should be on the table.
Thank you, Mr. Walters. Anyone else? Please come to the podium. And just your name and where you live. In 3 minutes.
Hi, this is my first time here. My name is Gabe Murphy, 5799 Edens Road, Anacortes, Washington, North Anacortes, Guaymas Island. Here accompanying Alan kind of on behalf of the Guaymas Island community to help advocate for better avenues of communication and collaboration between us. You know, I think I went to high school with the...
Mr. Murphy, could you be a little closer to
Yeah,
the
sorry.
mic? Oh, that's great. Yeah,
Sorry,
you can lift it up
I know a
little
lot
bit.
of you. I think I went to high school with maybe 3 people on the board here, so that's pretty awesome. I'm part of the community. We want to be in collaboration with you guys on all these ferry-related things because it affects all of us, and we want to have the least amount of impact on, you know, the downtown area, you know, while making it as easy for the Guaymas residents to go about their business and contribute to this city. So thanks for the opportunity to speak.
Thank you. Anyone else? Going once? Okay. Well, now we'll move on to our consent agenda, items 5A through F. Council?
Mayor Pro Tem,
Mr. McDougall?
I move approval of consent agenda items A through F.
Second.
Motion by Mr. McDougall, second by Mr. Young to approve consent agenda items 5A through F. All in favor signify by saying aye. 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 Any opposed? Motion passes. Okay, so next up, we are on to item 6A, which is a public hearing on the Community Development Block Grant 2025 Action Plan. This is a public hearing that we will open and close tonight, and then we'll have a second public hearing on April 21st, 2025. Well, obviously, 2025. Stephanie Snyder will be introducing this item, and she is our housing coordinator for the city of Anacortes, as well as other jobs as well. So welcome, Ms. Snyder.
Thank you, Mayor Pro Tem Moulton and Council. So tonight, I am going to get this PowerPoint underway as a slideshow and talk a little bit about what we have going on. This is almost my second year anniversary, so this is only the second action plan that I've gotten to work with. And last year I did a PowerPoint with a 2024 action plan, and I wanted to go over what we're doing now with writing the action plan. First of all, for everyone who doesn't know what CDBG is, I have up here, it's the Community Development Block Grant. It's one of the longest running programs in the U.S. Department of Housing and Urban Development. It funds local community development activities with the stated goal of providing affordable housing, anti-poverty programs, and infrastructure development. And for a fun fact, Anacortes is the 7th smallest grantee of the CDBG grant in the U.S. So this year we opened up our application process to fund applications early in February. We actually posted it January 29th. Thank you, Mr. Walters. And this year we received 6 applications. My previous year we received 3, so we've doubled our applications this year. We only have so much money that we can give out, so this would be the planning department and my recommendations on how to spend it this year. And I wanted to go over where we are now in our 2024 CDBG grant. One of the interesting things for Anacortes is we have, our grant year begins on July 1st and it ends June 30th. We are in our 9th month of our 2024 grant year. It seems odd, but we're in yesterday. On May 7th, 2024, the allocations from HUD were announced. The city of Anacortes was allotted $106,279 for this 2024 funding year. Our entitlement year, again, is July 1st through June 30th, and we're in our 9th month of the grant year. These are the applications that have come in from some of our organizers in the city. Able Housing, that would be a capital project, requested $27,105 as a rental rehabilitation project. If you remember last year, we made an amendment to our 5-year consolidated plan adding disabled abilities to do projects, and that was passed by HUD, and we were able to do another project for disabled last year, and we'll go over our projects soon. Our recommended allocation for Able Housing would be 5% of the grant. This will allow Able Housing to check the box of qualifications to qualify for the Housing Trust Fund, opening up a lot more money for them to acquire housing. Able Housing's goal is to acquire housing in Anacortes for the adult disabled children who are being cared for by their parents, and they are aging out of their care age. So where are these adult disabled going to be? And we want to keep them in the city that they're used to. And Bruce from Able Housing has been just great to work with us and came in for the workshop and did everything he could. This is a new organization. Anacortes Family Center came in with a public services request of 15%. Public services is the 15% cap at HUD by regulation that we can only spend 15% on programs and not capital building. Anacortes Family Center sent a capital request for just under $9,000. The grant portion would be 8%, and that would replace fire equipment in our emergency shelter campus at Anacortes Family Center. Anacortes Housing Authority requested $100,000 to replace the roof on Site 3 in Anacortes. We are recommending $54,795, and the grant portion would be 52%. Administration Anacortes requests $21,256. This would be 20% of the grant. Historically, all of the grant recipients that are municipalities do use 20% of their administration allowable use to fund their costs to operate this grant and or refund themselves for other programs they use from the general fund. One of our public service requests application received was not qualifiable because they had already been receiving a contract fund for public services from the city. Another public services request was not allowable because its request, which is rental assistance, is not allowable in CDBG. Administration fees are expected in the amount of 20% each reporting year. And as I've worked with HUD as your new operator of this program, they ask me on each filing, where are our administration fees?
Mayor Pro Tem Moulton.
Mr. Walters.
Might be useful to pause there because we talked a little bit about this in the HACS committee last week.
Thank you, Mr. Walters.
In the past, City Council has not wanted to take any of the administrative fee, the up to 20%, for administrative costs. And the rationale there was we wanted as much CDBG money to go to actual projects on the ground as possible. However, we are persuaded that we really should take the 20% because taking the 20% administrative fee provides that money to replace general fund, general revenue that is paying for Stephanie anyway, and it comes without burdensome reporting requirements versus
Yay.
spending, right, versus spending it on a project that will have those burdensome reporting requirements. We were aware of this in the past, and I think it was the judgment of City Council that we were concerned that we wouldn't spend general revenue on these types of issues if we didn't draw a clear line in the sand and say, you know, we're going to preserve this 20% for that. But now, in today's environment, we are spending quite a bit more than the 20%, you know, in excess of $150,000 a year out of general revenue on these types of issues. So we've really broken through that barrier, and now for efficiency's sake, for the less red tape that we can achieve, it makes sense to take the 20%, and if we were to do that, we would assumedly do it into the future as well, so long as CDBG continues to exist.
Mayor Pro Tem.
Mr. Young.
Thank you. I don't think it's a surprise that our community is in need. I mean, all over you hear the stories of desperation in a lot of ways. And, and I think that with the limited resources, because resources are limited, I think we're fortunate to have the organizations that we do that are making, doing the work, creating the opportunity, trying to lift and push forward. I noticed that community action wasn't included in that, and I find them to be just truly stellar too, in addition to, of course, the Family Center and the Housing Authority and the nonprofits that are swinging for the fences. I'm truly in awe of that, but I'm curious if you would elaborate just a little bit as to why they are not and how that came about.
Absolutely. Thank you, Mr. Young, for bringing that up. Community Action did apply for 15% of public service funds. However, Community Action has a contract with the city using general funds in the amount of $89,500 per year. That disqualifies them from being able to utilize CDBG funds for public services.
Excellent. Excellent. And so that's been communicated to Community Action, of course.
It has.
I just think that that's so important because, again, we do have limited resources. I wish we didn't, really, but we do. And I think the beauty of what we've created here by the centers and the organizations that are fighting and the volunteers that are on the front line and people that are donating money is a wonderful gift of compassion for everybody, and I just think it's great. So I was curious. I think that that needed to be clearer, and I'm glad you could shed some light on it for us. Thank you.
Absolutely, Mr. Young. And in talking to Sandy Finney from Community Action, they will be coming back around next year with some capital requests. You're welcome.
Mayor Pro Tem.
Mr. Walters.
Can you explain a little bit more the nature of that disqualification? Is that because it's for the same service? It's the same scope of work?
It says if I don't have it written out with me, but It was a disqualifier in Chapter 7 HUD of use of public services, and it said you are qualified if you are new, if you have increased your capacity from the year prior, if you are receiving general funds from your local state or city or county municipality, then you can't apply for public service funds.
If you're receiving any general funds, it seems like some of our other applicants are also receiving.
I think I need
general.
my boss on this. He helped me read it. John, help.
Good evening. I'm John Coleman, the Director of Planning, Community, and Economic Development. So the way the HUD guidance reads is if you qualify for state local financing, then you don't qualify for the public services funding through CDBG. So by the nature of us providing money to them for public services, then they're not qualified.
So does that mean that, don't we do that with the Family Center also?
No, because the Family Center is funded through the Housing for All, which is a different mechanism and a different purpose.
Okay, so our community paramedic program and our outreach program doesn't count for that too? Because don't we give money for that as well to the Family Center?
Yeah, that's in addition to the Yes for Housing money.
Right.
I'll have to look into that one.
Okay.
Yeah, that would be great to have a little more clarity on that. Yeah.
Right.
Thank you.
Mayor Pro Tem.
Mr. Walters.
In some ways, at least to me, it doesn't really matter. I mean, we should fully comply with the rules, and I've always thought we should reduce the number of projects to the smallest number possible for streamlining of all the administrative costs, because we have demonstrated we're willing to backfill with general revenue. You know, use the easy money on the hard projects and use the hard money on the easy projects.
Right.
And one way or another, we will do what we can to meet these needs in our community, but let's not make it hard for ourselves to do it.
Exactly.
Thank you.
Anybody else? Okay, moving on. So 70% of HUD funds are required to be used for the low to moderate income benefit. 80% of the recommendations that we have here tonight are going to meet that requirement for HUD. This is a refresher screen that you saw last year in 2024. So I wanted to show you the work that we have accomplished so far. At this time last year, we had a total funds of almost $160,000. The bubbles that have blue letters are showing the older grant fund buckets that had money in them, and the green bubbles that have the orange letters are the projects that we were doing for 2024. As a reminder, we are in our 9th month of 2024, so I want to show you where's the money. Currently, we have $26,713 left. We have exhausted the 2021 funds, the 2022 funds. We have $143 left in the 2023 funds, and we have completed the curb cuts, program servicing for AFC, exterior maintenance for the temporary shelter, the roof removal replacement for everything at the Anacortes Housing Authority. All those 4 projects are completed, with only one remaining underway, which is the Salvation Army Food Pantry flooring. And so our next chapter here, I wanted to show you some of the pictures of the work that we got done since I saw you last year. We did the exterior maintenance for the temporary shelter housing, completed. We did the new roof on the Housing Authority, and that is Site 2. This ran over its timeline last year, and it wasn't completed by the end of the grant year, so this will be reported on for 2023 funding for the 2024 year. The contractors had a delay, and we couldn't complete it by the end of the grant year, but it will be reported on this year. So we got 2 roofs done. And we also did the curb cuts for disabled access at 24th and H, and that's how they look now. Our CDBG team Mayor Matt Miller has to sign everything that goes into HUD. John Coleman, you just met, is my director. Melinda Suit is taking over for Heiko Miles, who is retiring, and I am your PCED coordinator. So if anybody needs any questions or comments, you can reach out to me. We will keep comments open until April 15th, and we will have another public hearing for council's approval.
Mayor Pro Tem,
Mr. Fantini.
can you go back to your bubble slide one more time? With all the projects,
I?
the completed and,
Oh, bubbles. The old bubbles or the new bubbles?
the ones that show completed and underway and,
Okay,
so I just had a question kind of about
sure.
I just had a question kind of about timing of funding. So it's great that we've completed all these projects and money well spent. Is there, with everything that we hear about grant funding right now at the national level, is there any kind of timing issues? Like what, I see that this project is underway for the Salvation Army. What would happen? Is there any timing issues if it doesn't get completed? Do they take the money back? Do we move it to another project? How does that kind of work?
Thank you, Mr. Fantini. That's a wonderful question. If the recipients that are granted these funds do not use them in a timely manner, that is HUD's word for being on time, by the end of the grant year, every year, which is June 30th, we are supposed to be able to move it to another one. And we have to be thoughtful and graceful in the work. Is it underway? I have to police this with the recipients and chase them a bit and let them know timeliness matters. And if I get to the 9th month, which is where we are now, 270 days into my grant, and they haven't performed, I'm supposed to try to find a different project to put it into. I can't say that I have anything solid right now for this year, but I know that Anacortes Housing Authority always needs roof money.
Sure.
But, and we can add on to that. But
Is it-
with HUD, they can claw back the funds that are sitting in the bucket that we saw. We had quite a much bigger balance last year. So I had a lot of work to do to get the funds accounted for, drawn out, brought into the city, spent, and all these projects taken care of.
Sure.
So if we don't do them, they can claw them back. Status quo, as it's been, has been 3 years of grace period from HUD. It's a little stormy right now. We don't know if anything will change with that, but we are supposed to spend it by June 30th and be reporting on it in September.
Thank you. I also just quickly wanted to voice my support and happiness to see that the Able Housing Initiative is added to this year's list. And I also wanted to compliment you on having double the amount of applications. I think that speaks to the amount of public outreach that we're doing.
Thank you, Mr. Fantini.
My last question would be, if the unfortunate thing would happen and we don't get this project done, could we, I know we did not allocate any money to administrative for that year. Is that something that we could do at that time, or does it have to be towards an actual physical project?
We have a 20% cap each year for that money, and we can't go back. Like, we are in the 2024 grant year, but making an amendment is a workout. I have to publish it and give a public comment period
Sure,
for 30
sure.
days. So by the time we made an amendment, will it get approved on time? By the end of the time I need to report in September, I'm not sure, but
So we just really want them to get that done.
yeah,
Good.
yeah. So
Okay.
we'll do our very best, but we are underway. A lot of it was working with headquarters at Salvation Army because they had to have a contract and we had to get that signed and get back and forth. Our lieutenants in our local Salvation Army are fantastic. I love working with them, and they're trying and doing very hard. And they're also new, like me, so we're just in it together, holding hands to try to get it done. But I feel like we should be done with this project in the next 2 months.
Great, thank you.
You're welcome, Mr. Fantini. Anyone
Mayor
else?
Pro Tem.
Mr. Young?
Thank you. I'm in total agreement, but I must admit that I am looking at world economic uncertainty that's happening, and sometimes worry feeds upon itself. As a result of that, it creates more destabilizations of systems. You know, I spend about an hour and a half each morning looking at financial markets and, you know, trends and thoughts. I find it fascinating. But there is greater discussions of possible recessionary items. And given the moves to, you know, reduce budgets in the government and everything that's taken place, you know, I'm not sending a judgment on that. What I'm pointing out is that there are cuts coming everywhere and already is, and the wailing and the gnashing of teeth is already happening. So I do think that we should anticipate some of the worst, but if we get the best, we still win. You know, my mom always said to me, she said, it's better to have it and not need it than to need it and not have it. So, you know, my suggestion is that we begin, even though I know that they're working incredibly hard to get done what they need to get done in order to make it possible, I think we need to make sure that we have a plan A, B, C, and D, so we use this money for the greater good of the need in our town, in our city, and, you know, whatever that means, you know, that we need to do, not only as a body of people here, let us know. But I just think that I'm very cautious at this point, and I think that we should prepare for whatever downturn may come, short-term, long-term, whatever that is. So if the money can be clawed back before that timeline and buzzer expires, we're ready to push it on something else. If it doesn't happen for those, okay, you know, but it's better to, you know, have it and not need it than to need it and not have it. So I'm just pushing the urgency of that, and if there's anything I or we can do and to help facilitate that, I know your hands are full, just as, you know, so many, but let us know.
Thank you so much, Mr. Young. And my hands were full emptying 3 years of buckets, and I hope that I can have Plan B, C, and D next year ready. Thank you.
So I would also testify to this, seeing that after this last project is done, we have $143 left from 2023. So I would say that's a stellar achievement that you've worked with several years of leftover funds and wrangled them to the form they need to be to keep the funding and get these projects done. So thank you.
Thank you, Mayor Pro Tem Moulton.
Any more comments from council? Because I'm ready to, okay, open up the public hearing. This is a public hearing, and members of the public are obviously invited to come up. And if they have any comments, you have 3 minutes to talk about what you'd like to say about the CDBG grant, anything you've seen here, any thoughts or concerns? Okay. Seeing none, I will close tonight's public hearing with a reminder that we will have another public hearing on April 21st. Thank you. Thank you, Ms. Snyder and Mr. Coleman. Our next agenda item is right in front of me, and it is, thank you, Mr. Hoagland, it is property tax assessments. We're all going to get a lesson in property taxes tonight, and Mr. Hoagland will introduce our guests. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Moulton, members of the council, and members of the audience. It's my pleasure to introduce Danny Hagan tonight. He is the elected official, the county assessor. He's been with the assessor's office since 2015 and became the elected official, I believe, in November of 2022, so for just over 2 years now. And I believe that I know enough about property taxes to confuse people, so I'm very much looking forward to Mr. Hagan's comments tonight.
Thank you, Mr. Hoagland. And I would just like to add a little bit to that. So not only is Mr. Hagan our county assessor, but he is the vice president of the Washington State Association of County Assessors. And he's very involved in community organizations like Community Action. He's the treasurer of the Board of Community Action. He's the vice chair of the board of Chinook Enterprises, And he has served as an advisor, a curriculum lead, and a facilitator of leadership Skagit. So he is truly a public servant, and we're really glad to have you. Welcome, Mr. Hagan.
Thank you. I really appreciate the introductions. I would be remiss to not mention that public service in the assessor's office runs in my family. My dad, Wes Hagan, served as the chief deputy assessor under former assessor Mark Leander. So I grew up with a strong appreciation for the work we do in property valuation and taxation. Tonight I have two special guests with me, my son Duncan and my daughter Lydia. To be honest, they didn't have much choice in coming along tonight, but they're good sports, and I always appreciate their positive attitude anytime they join me. I will not be able to stay for the entire council meeting, but I did bring plenty of business cards, so if there's any kind of discussions you want to follow up with, please grab one of those from me. But with that, we will get started. So what we're going to cover today, kind of the three biggest positives of property tax. We're going to talk about the Washington State's budget-based tax system, kind of review the assessed value changes that you received in the mail last fall, talk about the reinspection of the Anacortes School District that was completed in 2024, briefly talk about our use of Street View imagery and how that's increased our efficiency and our data accuracy, and then really spend some time talking about our senior citizen and disabled person exemption program, and then finish up with just some outreach offerings, kind of like what I'm doing today. Positives of property tax. I found some random person on the Skagit County Property One Stop that happens to live inside the city of Anacortes, and his tax bill is on display there. The number one positive thing about property tax is transparency. This transparency, if you go to Skagit County One Stop, you can go and see anyone's tax bill inside of Skagit County. Not only do you see what their tax bill is, but you will see their assessed value, and you will see where every one of those dollars goes. That transparency leads to local accountability. If you look at that bill, you will see Skagit County, which is led by 3 elected commissioners. You will see the city of Anacortes, which is ran by the city council and the mayor. The Flago Park and Rec District, which is also elected. Hospital District, Port District, and our local school district. And also that state levy, which is kind of run by our state representatives. So when you get that property tax statement, there is a little bit of voice in every one of vote you had on who you are paying and where that money is going. And third, I really think that leads to efficiency. Property tax is a local tax. It costs money to send money. So if we send money to Olympia or if we send money to Washington, D.C., we will not get it back dollar for dollar. And we usually get it back with some kind of strings attached on how we can use that money. Not saying that's a bad thing, but I am saying when you have property tax dollars, they stay local, you get to have more local control over how you use them. So when I talk about property tax being a good tax, it really is in reference to other taxes and kind of the importance it is for our local taxing districts. In Washington State, we have a budget-based tax system. One easy way to describe what that is to say what it is not. The state of Oregon has a rate-based tax system. That is a tax system where the state legislature determines what the levy rate is going to be on the property, and as your value of your home goes up and down, your tax bill goes up and down to match that. A budget-based system is where the budget of all the taxing districts is limited, and the assessed value and levy rate are allowed to float to really determine, to create that taxing district budget. Or the budget's created first, and then the assessed value and levy rate are created based off of that. So how is that budget constrained? In the state of Washington, since 2004, around those parts, there has been a limit to a 1% tax increase to every taxing district plus new construction. That new construction is really to mention that you are also going to be expected to provide more in services. If you have a housing development go in, that means there's more students in your schools, more services for the fire department, police, and all that. I will also mention that in Skagit County, new construction is not a really big boon on taxing districts' budgets like in other parts of the state. Skagit County historically sees anywhere between 1 and 2.5% growth of new construction. That's very low compared to some parts of the state that are closer to double digits. The only way a taxing district is allowed to increase their budget past that 1% is by going to the will of the voters for a levy lid lift. And I believe the city of Anacortes did that a year or two ago, and it did pass. In that system, the taxing district, whether it be school district, city, fire district, has to go to the voters and say, I hope you think we are doing a good job with your money. We need to be able to continue to provide the same level of services, or we want to increase the level of services, and that's going to cost us X more dollars. Do you vote for that? And if the community supports that, it is passed, that new budget is established, and that is your legal limit moving forward. One caveat to that is parts 1 and 2 of the state school levy were rate-based from 2018 through 2021. That was in response to the McCleary decision and the state of Washington saying that they were not doing an adequate job of funding basic education. During those 3 years, there was also a very quick increase to residential values. That did lead to a pretty large increase in property tax bills. It coincided when values increased, so I get a lot of concerns saying that the value of their property is really what's driving up their tax bill, but in general, that is not the case. Value changes in the Anacortes School District this past year, so this is for the change of value notice you received in the fall, which created the tax statement that you just received close to Valentine's Day, because we like to remind you that we love you. Overall, the Anacortes School District saw residential values increasing approximately 6%. That varied quite a bit because the Anacortes School District was physically re-inspected, so we redid all of those properties, so these are just averages. The north and central neighborhoods saw increases of closer to 10%. And when I say the north neighborhood, this is kind of an old map, so that really generally means Old Town and the entire area north of Oaks. The south neighborhood and non-waterfront Guimas residential actually went down in values, not substantially, but when the rest of the school district is going up, that little bit of going down should have meant a small reduction in the overall tax bill for them. In commercial values, overall values weren't drastically changed. However, there was at least one pretty substantial land sale of commercial property on commercial. Rumor has it there used to be a bowling alley there. However, the depreciation of most of the structures have kind of leveled out values, but land values did increase quite drastically for commercial properties, especially around Commercial Avenue. So this is an older picture. This is what we should be looking like when we're doing our physical inspections. The Anacortes School District had approximately 13,700 residential parcels that we inspected and another close to 3,000 commercial and industrial parcels. The Anacortes School District is one of the more logistically challenging school districts in Skagit County, as we also have to value Sinclair Island, Cypress Island, Guimas, and Vendovi, Allen, and some other unserviced islands. It's such a hard day in July to have to go out there that I actually volunteer myself to go to Sinclair. It's a struggle. Just kidding. It's beautiful, absolutely beautiful area. Our appraisers are well marked, and we've, since COVID, also started to use as much imagery as possible to do pre-inspections of properties. That goal is to make sure our property data is accurate, but also if the property looks the same as it did 6 years ago, we want to increase the privacy of that homeowner, not invade their privacy, walk all around their property if we can see that nothing has changed. One of those tools that we use is Street View imagery. We had a contract. Actually, Skagit County Public Works started a contract in 2020, and they drove all of the unincorporated Skagit County using artificial intelligence, they were able to inventory all of the guardrails, signs, and everything throughout the county, so they have an inventory of where everything is. Unincorporated areas are not as valuable to the assessor just because there's a lot fewer houses per mile of distance. But we were going into the Anacortes and now Cedar Woolley areas, and so we had Cyclomedia drive the city of Anacortes, the city of Cedar Woolley, Clear Lake, and Big Lake. We were able to use that imagery for all of the inspections we were doing inside of the city of Anacortes. This is an image of this building. You see to the left, it kind of shows you, they take a 360-degree image every 10 feet, or it's actually every 3 meters as a Dutch company. And then you can just kind of click on it and go all the way around and have measurement tools. They do LiDAR, so you actually know where the depth is on these things. And it's a one car that drives by instead of 7 appraisers on the ground having to knock on doors and get through backyards. So a lot fewer dog bites. Senior Citizen Disabled Persons Exemption Program. A mentor of mine who's now retired, he was out of the state of Kansas. He talks about a state tax system as a 3-legged stool. You have your sales tax, your property tax, and your state income tax. Has anyone tried to sit on a 2-legged stool? It's not very easy. The state of Washington has invented a 3rd leg of special taxes that kind of balance that out, but it does rely heavily on property tax and sales tax. This is not beneficial to our seniors who are retired. If you are working, it is a good place to live. It is not good if you are retired. To combat that, the state of Washington has the Senior Exemption and Disabled Persons Exemption Program. This program is not to give seniors any kind of kickback. It is to make sure that the tax system overall is fair and equitable. We're really looking to get the word out to make sure that everyone in Skagit County that can qualify for this program is in the program and is getting a reduction in their property taxes. Currently, the income threshold is $48,000. This gets adjusted every 3 years and is based off of 65% of the county household median income. That is calculated by the Office of Financial Management. I thought their numbers were rather low when this was calculated. I sent an email and didn't get much of a response. But they've come out with new numbers and they are tipping upwards. And so I would not be surprised in 2 years that that threshold is at or above $60,000. Outreach offerings. We are always trying to do outreach for senior exemption program. So if I have been to the Anacortes Senior Center multiple times, we now have 2 staff that are bilingual, so we're trying to really work on getting the word out to the Hispanic community that the program is there. I also do a presentation completely talking about how property tax is a good tax. Shockingly, there isn't people begging me to talk about that, but it is available. I'm also willing to talk about how we calculate assessed values, our destroyed property and disaster preparedness. And actually, I need to restart the Coffee with Assessor because I just got an email from someone asking when the next one is. One thing that I forgot to mention in one of the slides is one thing that's been really important to me is vertical equity in assessments. And the idea of vertical equity is that all horizontal equity is kind of all property types being assessed fairly. And that's kind of easy to understand. Vertical equity is how all properties at different sales ranges are assessed equitably. And in a lot of states, not only is there systematic issues, but it's much more difficult to value high-end custom homes at the same level as more homogeneous neighborhoods of areas that have a lot of sales. So that's one thing I've been really, really working on. The Lincoln Institute of Land Policy has put out a vertical equity application that I've been using the past 2 years. And the report on how we're doing for vertical equity is up on my website for Skagit County. And I'll give away the conclusion, we're doing really well. And that's kind of exciting, but it's even more exciting to have a third party be able to quantify that and really show how we are doing with vertical equity. So that's actually a presentation I'll be giving in May on what Skagit County is doing to be achieving such good vertical equity. And with that, I will open it up to any questions.
So this is, thank you so much, Mr. Hagan.
Yes.
This is open for public comment as well, so I would like to start with the public if they have any questions, and then I'll move on to council. I don't see any at the moment, so maybe we'll start with council, and then maybe the public would like to comment as well. Who would like to start? Mr. Young?
Yes, thank you. That's my little light. Just kidding. Thank you, Mayor Pro Tem. Mr. Hagan, you know, it's always fascinating. When I lived in North Carolina, I was deputy chairman for the state. And when I came here, I had the pleasure of serving for a period or two on the commission here. Yep. And it's always fascinating how things can vary, but you know, the goal in being consistent is everything. And it's always just a little surprising how it works. And so I know you're working incredibly hard and how you're trying to bring it about and keep everybody informed as to how assessments are made, you know, taxes, what do they mean, where do they go, all of that. It's a continual process of education. I want to ask just a little bit further. You know, we live in a population here of a large population of people over the age of 50. You know, I'm barely there myself. And although, you know, there are thresholds that allow you to be able to, you know, maybe have deductions. You know, I personally know of a number of seniors that have approached me about it. And, you know, their incomes are right around that. Social Security is, you know, roughly almost $2,000 a month. So, you know, they're up to 22 and any other pensions or any other stuff if they're lucky to have that. And so it brings them, you know, somewhere under that. But there are some people who are right at that threshold, right there. Are there deductions that allow them, meaning like medicines, or meaning that those things that they can do to show that their income, when it's all said and done, is truly below that, and that, because medicines, you know, are through the roof. So do you work with seniors on that? And, you know, I guess, you know, when I know some 90-year-olds who are alone, and they're trying to figure it all out. And so would you elaborate just a little bit on that? Is it possible to do that? And
yeah, that's a very good question, and I really appreciate it. So, yeah, one of the things that the state legislature did add to the program 3 or 4 years ago was deduction of medical costs in specifically. Yeah. And so if you are a senior that is close to that threshold but does have medical costs, my office wants to hear from you. We do have an online portal that you can start submitting your information from home, and even if it's not complete, our staff will then reach out to you and let you know what we need. The goal of my office is to get you into the program if you are qualified for the program, and we'll look through any kind of bags of receipts that you have to really work on that. And again, if you don't qualify this year, stick around. I know my mom is an incredible woman. She worked for the Skagit County Prosecuting Attorney's Office as an assistant for her career, but just between the pension of that job and her Social Security that her and my dad got, she didn't qualify for the program, and she's now living with me. And so I understand the issue, and that threshold increasing from 48,000 to 60,000 is kind of starting to pull in the people like my mom. And so I'm really hopeful that we can get there. I know Representative Clyde Schaefer's actually has a bill out right now to change that threshold from 65% to 70%. The Assessors Association was in agreement that either of those numbers is a good number. For a long time, the state would only have one threshold for the entire state, and then that was King County and Pend Oreille County battling it out for one wanting it higher, the other one wanting it lower, and in reality, they were both right. And we just needed to think through that and think, hey, if each county just ties it to their median household income, it becomes fair across the state.
Excellent. Just one follow-up to that. Based upon that, does it allow the assessor's office to be able to make adjustments, or is it an elimination? Because some people's income are, even though they may only be bringing in this amount of money coming in, but the assets, the basis of stuff that they can, that they've accumulated, So the question is, true need. And it's hard to gauge that. That's a little subjective in a way, and I know that may put the onus a little harder on trying to figure that out. But I think the good news is that there are opportunities for seniors and people, disabled people that are on a limited income to be able to help live here, which is a big thing, but also at the same time pay their taxes.
Absolutely. For better or for worse, there really isn't much leeway in each county assessor's job. I appreciate having a job that is really laid out in front of me by law, and I just have to follow that. But we do work within the means of that as much as we can to make sure every senior is in. And I work with our state association to continue to improve legislation to allow more and more people into the program. Yeah.
Mayor Pro Tem.
Mr. Fantini.
Thank you very much for your presentation. I also want to thank you for bringing your children tonight. I have 2 little ones at home as well, and I think it's really important to bring our kids into the process, even at an early age, so that they can see what's happening and start to care about this kind of. I'm sure they're very well behaved, by the way. So, good job.
It's not their first rodeo.
Sure. I do have a couple questions. I'm relatively newer to my role, so some of these might be very base level, but it also might be some that's shared by some of our constituents who don't have a depth of knowledge as well. So we get an updated assessment every year around Valentine's Day. Are we only ever going to get like one assessment a year? Are there ever times when our property might be assessed more than once a year?
No, we only send out notices of value once per year, and that'll be based off of statistical changes, any new construction, kind of every reason that could possibly make it change happens in the fall. The exception to that is if we find out that we had some information wrong and we go backwards, then there can be some adjustments to previous assessed values, but we only send out one certified assessed value per year.
Okay, and kind of piggybacking a little bit on Mr. Young's question, when you send that assessment out, and I have to admit, I look at the numbers, but I don't read all the fine print. I do think that the senior exemption and disabled exemption program is great. I have actually helped I'm a banker by profession, and I have pointed that out to a few people and even helped them to access the website before. Do you put anything on your assessment about it? Like, is there a special call out or a bold?
We do what so many government agencies are really good at. We put it in really fine print on the back. That is something that I'm going to be working to kind of change. One thing I want to do is start adding a whole kind of a flyer in there that's not just your set change of value. That really is dictated by RCW, what has to be on there, and so it really fills up. But if I can throw in an extra piece of paper, it'll cost a little bit more money, but it'll kind of talk about the senior exemption program, talk about any updates to the office, and I think a lot of assessors' offices are making more use of that and kind of just adding that one piece of mail. It's pretty efficient because you're already paying for the postage, and so it's just added to that change of value notice, and I will make sure I keep that thought, and hopefully we might be able to do that next change of value notice.
Okay, and I did appreciate you said, look like any help with outreach or whatnot is appreciated. One of the things that I would actually suggest is so in banking, in retail banking, our #1 customer that we see in our lobbies are seniors. I would say that they probably make up 70% of the visitors to our office. And a lot of times, we are a lot of the interaction that they get on a pretty regular basis. Maybe they don't have as much family around or whatever. I would maybe suggest that you reach out to some of the local banking institutions, even with a flyer that could be put on their billboards, I'm sure, or I'm on their community boards. I'm sure I know our bank would be willing to put out a pamphlet, but a lot of those relationships, we want to help our seniors. We want to connect them to, because I felt the website was great. It was very intuitive. I had one lady that could not get it all done. Somebody did reach out to her within a couple days. It was fantastic. But your point about that missing connection, so I would say we have to meet people where they are. I'm telling you right now, a lot of seniors in the bank. So if you thought about that, I would be happy to put something up.
No, yeah, I really appreciate that feedback, and I will make sure I take that back to the office. Actually, Councilmember Walters had a good suggestion about a landing page on our website for the senior exemption program, kind of information-wise. We are working on that, but Skagit County is going through a whole website redoing, and I didn't want to do something twice. So that is in its, but anything we can do, because then as soon as we have that link, we could even allow City of Anacortes to post that link on their website for people to use. So we're really looking for those ideas. So thank you.
A landing page is great, and things online are great, but in my experience, the older senior population is a little bit more hesitant to go online. Certainly capable, but maybe more hesitant. So really putting something physical in front of them, I think, will lead to more robust use.
Thank you, Mr. Fantini. Thank you, everyone, for the discussion. Anything else from council or anyone in the public?
Mayor Pro Tem.
Mr. Walters.
Two things. One, the senior exemption program is super valuable, as has been discussed here, but it's also especially valuable in Anacortes because if you enroll in the senior exemption program for property tax, you are automatically enrolled in our utility discount program, which gets you a 30% discount on your city utilities. So that makes it even more valuable than just the property tax exemption. Two, I think that the number one question or misconception that people have about property tax is that when your valuations go up, the city of Anacortes or the county or the state or whoever receives more money. Yeah. And I could think of a number of ways to rejigger that slide to make this point even more clear. That's not the case. The city of Anacortes, until the levy lid lift, received about $5 million worth of property tax every year. And then we took 1% of that as an increase each year. And yes, if you bring up that slide here, I just had this conversation with a constituent, and I think that it was pretty instructive. Our property tax revenue at the city, and I guess our computer is very slow here at the podium, but our property tax revenue at the city, as shown here in orange in unadjusted dollars, goes up over time as you take the 1% and as we add new construction revenue. But inflation erodes that continuously. So if you look at inflation-adjusted dollars, which are in the goldenrod color, the inflation-adjusted figures actually show that from 2011 to 2021, over that 10-year period, our property tax revenue actually went down ever so slightly. And that was when inflation, which is shown in the blue line, was relatively low. Now in 2021, it started its hike upward or skyward. And then over the 3-year period starting in 2021, it was almost 20% cumulative inflation. So our property tax amount keeps getting eroded over time, even with taking the 1% and adding the new construction. And if we didn't have either of those in a different scenario, which we should graph just for illustrative sake, it would go down. The purchasing power of the property tax that comes into the city of Anacortes would actually go down over time, meaning we could afford fewer health care benefits, which probably overall are rising faster than inflation. We could afford maybe fewer road repairs. Those inputs are probably also costs rising faster than inflation overall. And then everything else that is rising with inflation gets eroded. So this is a really important point for understanding why we always take the 1% property tax increase and why it really is not sufficient in an era where we had 20% inflation. Prior to that, we could kind of get by. I mean, we were still losing ground, but not in a significant, really significant way with 1 or 2% inflation. But that 20% inflation over the prior 3 years is leading to problems at the school district level, problem in almost all the taxing districts. And so at some point, we are going to have to grapple with that.
Yeah, I think those are really good points. One thing I would add to that is one thing that you've seen increasing in all forms of government that isn't a tax, but it is a tax, is fees. Fees are going up because all of these local governments are needing to find new places of revenue. And when you talk about fees, it's kind of like talking about sales tax. It is probably the most regressive form of what you're trying to do for people. And that's not, I'm not an expert in that, and maybe building permit fees are a little bit different than that, so I don't want to speak to that. But when I talk to taxpayers, if they were to see a reduction in their property tax bill, it's just going to be an increase in fees that are also subsidizing all these government budgets. So the property tax, it's as close to a wealth tax as you can get with reasonable administrative costs. Most people's wealth is in real property, and this allows us to assess it at a fairly affordable administrative level.
Thank you. Thank you very much for the information and for the discussion. And I would also like to thank Lydia and Duncan for being such great audience members and for joining us tonight. So thank you. Okay, next up we have item 6B, and this is the Skagit Valley Clean Energy Alliance, who will present to us tonight. They're a 501c3 and an affiliate of the Skagit County Clean Energy Alliance. So there are two alliances here. There's a Skagit Valley Clean Energy Alliance, and there's a Skagit County Clean Energy Alliance, according to my notes. So their mission is to promote local and regional renewable energy, and they're here tonight to share information about the 2025 Solarize campaign. They've been here before, but this is an updated current version of what they're up to. And please welcome our presenter, Mary Walleb. Thank you, Mary.
Good evening, and I'm happy to be here, Mayor Pro Tem, Council, and citizens. Yes, this is the third year, and I'm on the Skagit County Clean Energy Alliance, and I have Joan Cross here as well, who's on the Alliance. So I'm going to get this going here. Well, I'm just going to go flip through these. It'll be easier. So this is the third year in a row we're pleased to offer solar to Skagitonians at a reduced cost through pre-vetted qualified installers. So yes, we are 501c3 whose purpose is promoting local and renewable energy. We do this through the Solarize campaign, through grants for public buildings, and we've had some successes with LaConner schools. We've gotten solar plus storage on the school, which is a emergency shelter, and public education. We are partnered with Olympia Community Solar. They've been our mentors, and we learned about the Solarize campaign through them and found it was a wonderful way to get renewable energy to the community. What we'll cover is how net metering works, about the Solarize campaign, the 2024 results, the 2025 timeline and enrollment, and how the City of Anacortes can support us. Okay. So how net metering works. So when it's sunny, the solar panels collect the energy and it's converted for use in the house. And when there's excess energy, it's simply banked back to the grid for times when the home needs, the sun isn't shining, the home needs the energy. Now, currently, there's a 1-to-1 net metering. So for every kilowatt that's produced and kilowatt that's banked, if you need it, you get that same kilowatt. That ends December 25th, 2025. So we don't know what that's going to go to. We know it's going to be less than the 1-to-1 net metering. And that was an agreement Puget Sound Energy had and other utilities had with the state. And so far, unless there's lobbying happening in Olympia, it's probably going to go down. So that's not a good scenario. But the good news is this is the time to get involved. And anybody that's in the program through the end of the year gets grandfathered in perpetuity. So it's a good time. Okay, what's the benefits of the Solarize program? So first of all, this is something that's been going on since 2009. I think Portland, City of Portland, got involved back then, and it's been there's been programs from coast to coast, Queen Anne, Mercer Island, and then of course Whatcom. We've had opportunities with many of the other programs, and this year or last year we had Whatcom County, Island County, Mason County, Thurston County, and Lewis counties, as well as Skagit, cities of Kenmore and Walla Walla. And there's a number of other east side King County cities that are joining up. So it shows that the reputation of the program is great. So the other thing about the program is it's simple, affordable, and secure. Simple. Essentially, we've set up a system where someone, a participant just signs on, they get an assessment through one of the pre-vetted installers, they get a quote, a decision is made, they can choose to go or no go, and then there's installation and you start generating energy. So the nice thing about the program, and I'll talk a little bit more about this, is I don't know if any of you have gone out and tried to find installers for solar. There's lots of them out there. And how do you know which is a honest and reliable installer? I mean, it's a lot of work. This program does all that vetting because we go through a procurement process similar to government procurement. So you go RFP out to bid. They do, look at the prices, they do bids, and then we do reference checks. So, and then we select the top qualified installers from that. It's affordable, so it's a time-limited group purchase rate, so it starts in March and goes to July. And we have to do that because the installers are giving us a reduced price. They can't do that forever. So, they're going to honor it for that period of time. May qualify for a 30% federal tax credit, and there's no Washington state sales tax on the equipment, and financing is available. So this is a scenario I put together, and I'll go through quickly, but if you want me to slow down, I can. We've been asked to do a return on investment scenario. So a typical 1,700 square foot house in Skagit County uses about 13,200 kilowatts a year, or equates to about $1,717 in electric bill. For that same 13,200 kilowatts, you need 12 kilowatts of solar to power that. That's at the current rate as $2.45 a watt. That's $29,400 for solar on your roof. Subtract the 30% tax incentive, now you're down to $20,580. So if you look at your now reduced electric bill, which is now to $84 a year, that's just for the hookup, you minus your annual electric usage, and you end up with a savings of $1,632 annually. You divide that by your solar usage that's been less than 30%, and your return on investment is in 12.6 years. And that's pretty conservative. I've heard people saying that they've gotten return faster than that. So it's secure, and I mentioned this earlier, that we do the work of pre-vetting the installers. We negotiate the special pricing, and we conduct a limited time campaign. So we basically are kind of within the county, the sales arm. We go out and reach out to the community, and we communicate with partners, and then we evaluate the performance of the installers afterwards. So in 2024, countywide, there were 150 people signed up to participate in the program. Of those, generated 17 installations that equates to 5.27 kilowatts converted to solar. City of Anacortes, there were 57 signups and 4 installations. Actually, quite a few of those through the farmers markets. So the past challenges, so we were in the past late getting the inserts in the utility bills, which are these in there. So we lost a month last year, and we're hoping to start getting in the utility bills in April. So we've got a jump start to that, and that gives us a couple of months. The other thing is some people just can't afford the upfront cost. I mean, it costs money. And then lastly, and this is one that's very common, some homes are just not conducive to solar. I mean, my home isn't, it's too shady. So hopefully in the future, there's going to be opportunity to do community solar. So if I can't do it, I can contribute to another project. Here's some pictures from 2023, O'Connor, Anacortes, and Mount Vernon, and then 2024. So this was just 6 out of, I think, 17 installations, or actually 3 out of the 17. So in a nutshell, in 2025, we have a lower cost per kilowatt, or per watt, from $2.45, that's the lowest it's ever been, from $2.81 a watt in 2023. Made in Washington equipment. So Silfab, which is the solar panels, are made in Burlington. And I don't know if you've had a chance to visit that manufacturing plant there. They're constantly hiring. They've already got 250 employees, and they were telling us that they're looking for more. So it's great business. It's great jobs in Skagit County. Financing partner with Puget Sound Cooperative Credit Union for reduced rate loans. And then I've mentioned we've expanded the program. There are also additional services, so people interested in battery storage, that's available. So battery backup, level 2 electric car chargers, and then home energy audit. And this is something I participated in. So they'll come in Community Energy Challenge through Opportunity Council and Sustainable Connections in Bellingham. They come in and they review your entire house. And it was a 4-hour effort. And they went through and showed me where you know, I was losing energy, what I can do to improve, and came up with this huge report and said, okay, these are all things you can do, and this is the cost estimate. This is a budget that you need. So I can go and start to, you know, chip away at some of these things. Even though I can't have solar, I can reduce the use of my electricity by better installations, windows, and so on and so forth. So the timeline, we've already started. We've secured the contracts. We launched the campaign March 1st, and on April 12th, we're going to have a kickoff at Maple Hall in O'Connor at 10 a.m., and that's where people can learn more about the campaign, but also meet installers. And the installers sit down one-on-one with people, and they take a look at their situation and say, okay, this looks like you're going to have a good opportunity. Let's sign you up, okay? And then we do outreach between now and July 4th, and then installation till the end of the year. So next steps, help. So we'd like to get the word out through your communication channels. We have worked with you in the past to get the inserts in the utility bills. I'm already connected with the group that does the mailing and know who to send the inserts to. We've done that before. This is not any cost on your side. It's just we pay for it. And then any other communication channels you have on your website, banners, whatever, would be great. So if there's somebody you'd like to connect me with, if maybe it's Jennifer, then we'll get that to her and get going on that. So, and lastly,
Mayor Pro Tem.
that's it. So questions?
Thank you, Ms. I want to make sure I pronounce it right.
Wolub?
Wolub.
Yeah.
And I neglected to mention that Ms. Wolub is also a LaConner Town Council
Yes.
member. And
That's,
that's
I
where
wear a couple hats.
recognize
yes.
you, as many of us do, right?
Yeah.
So thank you for your presentation. And yes, we'll open it up for questions, starting with Mr. McDougall.
Actually, before I go, did you want to see if anyone in the audience would like to ask anything?
Sure. Anyone in the audience have anything they'd like to ask at the moment? Okay, Mr. McDougall.
All right, thank you. And thanks for coming out. It's great to see Solarize Skagit again.
Yeah,
Been
yeah.
out the last few years. Question on the net metering.
Yes.
So basically, at the end of this year, or that applies to, like, if you get your installation done this year, you get the one-to-one
Yeah.
net metering in perpetuity.
Yeah.
Or if you had your installation done last year or the year before, whatever,
it's all
it
good.
continues. Okay. And that date actually applies to, like, when you connect your system to the grid. It's not like the date you make the, say, purchase, right?
No, it's when you're connected.
It's when you connect to the
Yeah,
grid.
yeah,
Okay.
because it's a relationship with Puget Sound Energy, so they need to do your hookup.
Yeah, totally.
And then
I
your
just wanted to
grandfather-
clarify
yeah.
that. Thank you.
Mayor Pro Tem?
Mr. Young.
Thank you. You know, I've always been a fan, and quite honestly, we're on our second array of
that's right.
solar installation. I think we were fortunate enough to have some friends in our neighborhood that when they were doing the initial push and they were giving the discount and paying 54 cents per kilowatt hour. That's like the old days. and so we've recently, last year I think, put in the second array because we updated our hot water system because it was, you know, timed out to an on-demand system, but with a small tank. And we recently upgraded our gas stovetop and oven because it was sort of creating problems to an induction oven.
Right.
And, you know, so I'm saying all of this to say that we've been trying to solarize everything we have in the house, but at the same time use the power that we're creating, because quite honestly, at our house, you know, I think we have several thousand kilowatt hours of credit at this point, and, you know, we're just trying to figure out how we use it efficiently and
Right.
effectively.
Right.
One of the things that I'm hoping that we could, that we get a little closer to is on the battery part, because the battery part is still kind of lacking in the sense that we are creating a wonderful thing about green energy and using what resources are already here. But if there could be some type of incentive for that, even if PSE or whomever were to allow some of the credits to go toward the purchase of a battery, you know, those would be some things that would work. And the last part of my question, I want to elaborate a little bit on that part of what's to come, what we're hoping and what we're pushing for. I have friends in California, and, you know, their house is on solar. But the unfortunate part about them in California is that the systems you know, we pay $7.99 a month for the connection fee, okay? Her bill is through the roof because there's been a way that companies have been able to go around those things. And I get it, you know, but I'm hoping that Washington State, being the lovely state that we are, that we continue to sort of resist those maneuverings, and that, you know, so she's still paying like $700 a month sometimes for the hottest months in a full system that's supposed to supply her house. The problem is that they were determining when was the optimal time, meaning after 1 o'clock in the afternoon down, so they tripled the rate. So I know you're aware of that, but I'm just wanted to hear that the advocacy groups, because we went through the nonprofit as well to get our solars in, are aware and that we're advocating for fairness in that sense.
Good, thank you. And actually, Olympia Community Solar has a really active advocacy group and lobbying group, and we work with them to have our voice heard in Olympia. So, yeah.
Thank you. And as far as our communicating it out, I think connecting you with Jennifer would be great. We have our little news flash page on our landing page. And also, I'm not sure when our A-Town is Our Town magazine is coming out. Ms. Shu, do you know? But we could put it in there
Oh, that would be great.
potentially. Okay, so that would be something that I think it's going to be, I'm not sure, I haven't heard anything yet, but anyway, that would be another thing to talk to Jennifer about. So if you leave us your, we have your contact info.
Yeah.
We can reach out to you and connect you and see all the ways that we can.
That would be awesome.
Spread
That'd be
the word.
awesome. Great, cool. That's
Yes.
exciting.
Well,
Any other questions?
Anyone else? Oh, Yes, you want to come on up to the podium and ask your question? Yeah, so everyone could hear you in the microphone. That would be great. Thank you. Just say your name and where you live, and that's it, and your question.
Sean McCool, I'm in Anacortes. I just had a question. You mentioned upfront costs.
Oh, close to the microphone, please.
You mentioned upfront costs. I was just curious about that, and if you had any examples of, assuming someone had to finance the whole thing, what would the payoff be if it was financed versus paying the whole thing off at once?
I don't have it at my fingertips, but we had done a few numbers and so on. And where it helped is in the financing because it's a low interest through Puget Sound Cooperative Credit Union. It's a little bit longer, but what you are saving every month in your electric bill pays what your loan every month. Yeah, okay. Yeah.
Sorry, so it sounds like financing can be a viable option
Yes.
financially for people with the savings that you have, you can pay your bill with, or your loan with.
Right.
Great. Well, thank you so much.
Thank
This
you.
is great information. Thanks for your questions too, Council. So our next agenda item is 7C, and it's an interlocal agreement with the City of Mount Vernon for mutual assistance. And here comes Mr. Rayum, our Public Works Director, to tell us all about it.
Good evening, Council, Mayor Pro Tem. It's hard to remember that one. Before you is an interlocal agreement with Mount Vernon for mutual assistance. The origin of this interlocal agreement was to contract Mount Vernon to stripe or paint long yellow center lines and the white fog lines. As you might have noticed, our white and yellow paint was a little squirrely last year. Our equipment is a bit dated, and we had new staff trying to use it. And lo and behold, Mount Vernon is in possession of a $400,000 paint machine that will take them only 2 days to paint all the white and yellow long lines, not like the little short ones, but the long, we call them long lines in the industry. In comparison, it took us 320 labor hours to put down all those really squirrely lines. By the way, the ones in Kauai are worse than ours. Just I got back from Hawaii, but I almost took pictures for you guys to say it could be worse. It's about I just put this in there because it's $140 for 5 gallons of the white or the yellow paint, so it's not inexpensive paint. So the agreement is set up basically to do that work, but we also expanded the scope of it. One backstop is that if we have a project or cost that is $45,000 or more, then we'll bring it to council. So this doesn't let us just go wild and mutually aid each other for anything past $45,000. We have to come back to City Council. And that's all the comments I have on it.
Okay, Council, Mr. Walters.
This proposed agreement looks like similar to the model that we have with the port, which has worked well, so I see no reason not to approve it. I move approval of the interlocal agreement as presented.
Second.
Okay, motion by Mr. Walters, second by Mr. Young. Mr. Franciac, will you please take the roll?
Mr. Young.
Yes.
Mr. Walters.
Yes.
Ms. Cleland McGrath.
Yes.
Mr. McDougall.
Yes.
Ms. Moulton.
Yes.
Ms. Hubick.
Yes.
Mr. Fantini.
Yes.
Motion carries.
Great. Then moving on to 7D is a contract modification for Commercial Avenue Corridor Plan Phase 1, which is the famous 11th Street to 13th Street section.
And I do have a map if you guys would like to look at the map.
Please, please.
Do you want the map? Here. Let me
What
put
do
it
we
up.
call it? Famous.
I was hoping to get this loaded before the meeting, but that didn't work out.
So just a reminder in the meantime that this has been under discussion and consideration for many years, and we talked at length and approved a roundabout several years ago, and then decided that with the enormity of the costs associated with that council decided to go with a signalized intersection instead, which will cost much less money and improve things at the intersection of 12th and Commercial especially, but then also 11th and 13th. And there's the map.
There's the map. It's not the biggest map, but the south is to the left, and then just it's rotated, and to the right is to the north. So before you is a contract modification with Alta Planning and Design in the amount of $103,898, increasing the total contract amount to $994,530 to take the 12th and Commercial project, which is 11th through 13th, through full design, and then having them on call for construction support. That's a typical thing we do with the engineering design firm. Alta's previous contract scope was to bring the roundabout design to 60%. We used those funds to get us almost, well, past 90%, but they are out of money now. The estimated construction cost for the signalized intersection project is $1,843,704. The 2019 cost estimate for the project with a roundabout was $5,025,442, and that did not include land acquisition, so it's probably north of $7 or $8 million. So it's a significantly less cost for the construction cost. When asked why the design costs are so high compared to the construction costs, Alta's project manager responded that they had to start from scratch on the new design. The channelization had to be redone. The signalized design wasn't even, didn't exist, so we had to create it. The turning movements need to be analyzed, and all of this gets to go through washed out review, reiterations, and approvals to get the project to construction. So it's a very high design cost for this size project, but keep in mind they were almost 60% into a roundabout design, so that's why there's quite a bit of design cost.
Thank you, Mr. Rayum. Mr. Walters.
Yeah, it's pretty much that they built or designed 2 intersections, and we're only going to build one of them. But it's the much cheaper version, so I guess that's okay. The total cost of design of this iteration of the intersection is around $400,000 or $500,000 still, though. That last modification in February 2024, I suppose, still had some roundabout in there, though.
Yeah, I would think when we switched gears, they were already pretty far down the road with the roundabout.
They were still
design.
doing roundabout until, what, July or June?
I think we switched gears in, would you say February of 2024?
February is when there was a contract mod, but
Yeah.
when did we actually switch gears? Was it in?
Oh, it was after that. It was like in April. I don't have the specific
Yeah, somewhere
date.
in there, yeah. I do think that we ought to have a complete postmortem on this project if we ever complete it. A lot has happened over 5 years of design, but I think we should carefully consider what went on, and also not just take Alta's word for it. I mean, I think their explanation makes sense. Yeah, they really did have to design a new intersection after planning out another one. But there were steps that we made along the way, too, that the city took that arguably we shouldn't have, or should have been made with more thought into what the total cost of the ultimate project was going to be. So I do hope that we will commit to that, commit to a complete review after we get this done. At the moment, though, especially with the very low cost of the path that we have now chosen, we're in for a penny, in for a pound. And so I would move that we authorize the mayor to sign this contract modification as presented.
Second.
We have a motion by Mr. Walters, a second by Mr. McDougall. Is there any more discussion?
Mayor Pro Tem.
Ms. Cleland McGrath.
Thank you. So because you're up here, I have to ask the status of our current grants. Can you give us any kind of an update? I don't think it has any, I think we need to move forward with this, but you're here, so I'm going to ask.
Sure. So we have 2 grants on this. You're talking just this project's grants, right? Okay, just making sure. So we have 2. One's from the Department of Transportation. It's a bike pedestrian grant. And there's no issues with that one. They're just like, yeah, great, let's go. No hiccups. Transportation Improvement Board is a different story. So they don't typically appreciate having cities sit on grant funds and not using them. So that's one thing probably important for us to know going forward. If we get TIB funds, make sure that we are committed to expending those funds quickly. That's their whole moda operandi. So I have to go to the March 22nd Transportation Improvement Board meeting and plead our case to reinstate us. The plan is that we'll have a bid approved, or we're approved to go to bid from WashDOT and TIB at that point, which hopefully we're in our like 8th iteration with WashDOT. So I've said it before, but I think this is the one where they're going to be like, okay, we're done. And they'll give us, so once I go to the board meeting and I have that, it's usually just a welcome back to the family type thing. And you know, we're back in state, so.
So, can I finish? So we just have to have it approved by DOT, the plan, but we don't have to have an accepted bid.
No.
And we won't have to actually go out for bid. We can, if we have the plan saying like, yep, you can move forward by March 22nd and you will do your finest presentation with them, schmooze them.
That's
Perfect. Okay. Thank you. I just wanted, it's always good to keep this in the front of our minds.
We can't go to bid until TIB says we can. That's why.
Okay.
Or else we'd be, well, we're still playing with WashDOT, but otherwise, like, I wish we were to bid by now, but we literally can't at this point.
And how much was their grant for?
Almost $1 million.
Yeah, so it
It's
makes
worth
a
it. Yeah.
big impact for us. Thank you.
And just to add on to that, what's the bike ped grant? What's the amount for that? Roughly?
I think it's $545,000. Like, we don't have much coming from the city's funds to fund this project.
Okay, and did you say that the overall project cost, the total, we're estimating at 1.9 million for the whole of phase 1? That sounds low.
The construction cost alone, yeah, it's
For construction.
$1,843,704 is the engineer's estimate.
Okay, and so it looks like we have 3/4, I mean, assuming that things go well with the Transportation Improvement Board, we have about 3/4 of that coming from funds rather than from the city.
Yep.
Okay, great. All right, I think,
Mayor Pro Tem.
Mr. Walters.
I hesitate to ask because we've kind of blown past every projected deadline on this project, this cursed project. But when do you imagine we might be under construction?
I want to go to bid as soon as I get the okay.
But then.
And then construction usually a month after that.
Okay.
I'm hoping we can get it done before, summer.
Well, we all hope that. I
We
guess
all hope
is
that.
my point. But you had also indicated that construction of the roundabout will be much more impactful than construction of our new plan, the signalized intersection. Do you continue to anticipate we'll be able to have the intersection mostly open during construction?
Yeah.
Okay, so that would make a big difference and impact on everything. Okay, thank you.
Well, let me kind of caveat that a little bit. So it's a 5-lane road, and so those kind of right turn only lane thing, those will be closed. So it'll be down to 3 lanes while they're under construction. But it'll be open.
Okay, well, good discussion, good update. Thank you, Mr. Rayum. And we do have a motion by Mr. Walters and a second by Mr. McDougall. Mr. Franciac, would you take the roll, please?
Mr. Walters.
Yes.
Ms. Moulton.
Yes.
Ms. Cleland McGrath.
Yes.
Mr. McDougall.
Yes.
Ms. Hubick.
Yes.
Mr. Fantini.
Yes.
Mr. Young.
Yes.
Motion carries.
Great, thank you, everyone. And our last item on the agenda is 7E, and this is an interlocal agreement for shared indigent defense services. And this is the second iteration of this to come to us. And Ms. Xu will be presenting.
Good evening, Mayor Pro Tem, members of the council, and members of the audience. I'm coming back 2 weeks later from our first presentation looking at the public defense system interlocal between the cities of Burlington, Mount Vernon, Cedar Woolley, and Anacortes. Each of the cities are presenting this final draft to their councils for adoption with the hope that we can move forward with this. I appreciated the feedback that we had during our last meeting, and we've been able to address a lot of those items. So just a quick slideshow tonight. The history, we have gone over that prior to 2015, we contracted out our public defense services and then ended up bringing in-house a public defender, creating our own Office of Public Defense. This year, the city's public defender resigned, and so this presented an opportunity for the city to reevaluate whether and how, not whether, but how we are handling our indigent defense services. That was specifically related to some changes from the Washington State Bar Association, which has created a 3-year phased-in reduction of caseload limitations and also a weighting system. So 3 years from this July, it's expected that we'll have about 75% less cases than what currently the public defender can handle. So the public defense interlocal basically is one indigent defense contract with one qualified law firm in which each of the 4 cities would come together to have those indigent defense services handled by that law firm. We spent a lot of time as we were drafting that, coming up with the detailed methodology about the payments, the screening protocols, how conflict counsel is assigned, how appeals are handled, and the use of public defense auditor services. And that all those things together come to be defined as the public defense system in the interlocal. So we'll go through some of those details. So one of the questions that had come up when we spoke previously is how are we determining what the actual cost allocations are? So the first year that we're looking at it is that we're going back and looking at our 2024 cases that were handled by the public defenders. In all of Burlington, Mount Vernon, Anacortes, and Cedar Rowley, there were just over 2,100 cases in 2024. We then use that for determining the percentage of the total cases, and that will become the basis for how the 2025 costs are handled. Then every year in October, we will look back and do a refresh to see if that is still the accurate cost-sharing method between the cities. We were able to also I think one question that had come up is, how is the billing going to be handled? And so there will be one bill that the contracted law firm will send, and then it will be broken up, and the cost share will be based on this payment share, where the city of Anacortes would be responsible for 22% of that monthly charge.
Mayor Pro Tem.
Mr. Walters.
I had suggested an alternative method, but that has some downsides too, in that it requires more tracking from the attorneys and provides a little bit less certainty to the cities as to what their projected costs will be. So I'm okay with what we've landed on here.
We did talk about that as a group and decided that this is a methodology that seems to be the easiest for us and have some systematic way of being able to understand what our costs are going to be. We also did some additional discussion just about our indigent defense screening and the assignment of conflict counsel, and we made the decision that each city would be able to be responsible for that. Currently, the city of Anacortes has a contract with the Skagit County Office of Assigned Counsel, and they do our indigency screening, both for in-custody and out-of-custody clients, and we would like to continue to do that. And some other cities have other methodology for how they're doing that, but we thought it made sense for us each to continue in whatever is currently working for us. We also thought that there may be, that each city would be responsible for the assignment of counsel in the case of an appeal. So any appeal-based legal counsel representation would be the cost of the responsibility of the city who had those underlying charges. So just 2 areas that were carved out from our earlier discussion. The areas that we did keep in there is the outside legal representation. So sometimes there may be a need for each of the parties in the interlocal to get some legal guidance about their indigent defense provider. And the decision was that we would use that and split that we'd split equally 1/4 of the sharing of those billings. And the third, the final item was just the public defense auditor. So currently, Mount Vernon and Burlington are utilizing this service where they have basically quality assurance that's going on to monitor the public defense system and make sure that caseload limitations, compliance with the standards, conflict referrals, and any remedial actions or training are necessary are being reviewed. And that also is going to be split equally amongst the cities. We felt that that was an important review process to keep in place. The duration of this interlocal, as it's proposed, will be effective once all the parties have signed, and it will expire in April of 2028 unless it's extended through a mutual agreement. So the next steps, as I mentioned earlier, is that each of the cities are bringing forward the same interlocal agreement to their cities. We're looking for acceptance, and then once that is all signed off, then we will distribute the request for qualifications that's currently being drafted and reviewed. Be happy to answer any questions that you may have.
Thank you, Ms. Shu. Council, any questions?
Mayor Pro Tem?
Mr. Fantini.
Thank you. I first just want to appreciate that this is the second item on our agenda tonight that is looking to work with other municipalities that are directly around us. And I think many of us have pointed out issues with revenue and the need to look at revenue. And so to find these kind of joint solutions with other cities that will save us money is really important. And I appreciate that approach. I'm in support of this. You answered most of the questions that I had from last time, so I'm in support of this.
I just want to mention that personally I do not think that this is going to result in a cost reduction for us because of the implementation of the new caseload standards, but it does give us a way to share those costs and have one firm who's looking at a bigger piece of the pie as they're looking at that RFQ.
Mayor Pro Tem.
Mr. Walters.
I agree that this is a better approach than what we have in the budget as adopted of adding another FTE or part of an FTE because it allows for that incremental scaling up as the caseload limit comes into effect, whatever those may be, or as caseloads simply change among the jurisdictions that are party to this agreement. So I think that this will work well for us to actually provide this service, but also will be easier for each of the cities, but especially us, to adapt as those changes take place. So I'm in favor of this, and I think it's a better system than what we have had.
Mayor Pro Tem?
Mr. Fantini.
Quick question. We had talked about that there was a ruling that was going to come down from did that come down yet?
No, there's not been a final word back from the Washington State Supreme Court. Historically, they have followed the guidance of the Washington State Bar Association.
Thank
so
you.
That is what we're working towards at this point.
Thank you.
Okay, I believe our questions have been answered. Council.
Mayor Pro Tem.
Mr. McDougall.
Well, Mr. Fantini's and Mr. Walters' points are very well taken. Essentially, this and the previous agreement lead to economies of scale for us, so we can horizontally scale that. So that's always a good thing. And with that said, I move City Council authorize the mayor to execute interlocal cooperative agreement 25-085 DEF 001 between City of Anacortes, City of Mount Vernon, City of Burlington, and City of Cedar Woolley.
Second.
Okay, we have a motion by Mr. McDougall, a second by Mr. Fantini. Mr. Franciac, would you please take the roll?
Ms. Moulton.
Yes.
Ms. Cleland-McGrath.
Yes.
Mr. McDougall.
Yes.
Ms. Hubick.
Yes.
Mr. Fantini.
Yes.
Mr. Young.
Yes.
Mr. Walters.
Yes.
Motion carries.
Thank you.
Thank you, everyone. There being no further business before us this evening, I now close the meeting. Adjourn.